Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Cut Rate Commander, the series in which we take a look at low-price commanders and make budget decks with them. My name is Grazzet, and today we'll be looking at a build featuring the Evil Queen-inspired witch, Eriette of the Charmed Apple. But before we continue, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content, and if you really like it, please consider supporting the channel directly either through Buy Me a Coffee or through our Game Nerds affiliate link in the description. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see which commanders we'll be covering next. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. Eriette of the Charmed Apple is a 2/4 human warlock that costs 1 and Orzhov that has the following 2 abilities. Firstly, each creature that's enchanted by an aura we control can't attack us or planeswalkers we control. And secondly, at the beginning of our end step, each opponent loses X life while we gain X life, where X is equal to the number of auras we control. Breaking down her core stats, Eriette is sporting a relatively low-to-the-ground CMC, a low-power, high-toughness stat block for her cost, and a pair of abilities that enable us to get extra mileage out of our auras by turning them both into attack prevention and AoE life drain. Taking a closer look at her first ability, it effectively turns every single aura we're running into a vow, making our debuff auras even worse for our opponent's creatures by tacking on an additional negative effect to them, and giving us the option to cast our beneficial auras on our opponent's creatures to not only prevent them from attacking us, but also to enable them to attack our other opponents more effectively. This then pairs very nicely with her second ability, which passively turns all our auras into a scaling AoE drain effect, making us even harder to kill as we continually gain life, while her first ability keeps our opponent's most dangerous creatures from swinging into us, and, most importantly, it enables us to win the game solely off the back of our auras by slowly draining out our opponents, provided of course we can keep those auras in play. So, as we can see based on her abilities, Eriette is clearly an aura-focused commander, but one with a twist, aiming to use auras to slow down our opponent's ability to attack into us while passively draining the life out of them, instead of just stacking auras on herself and our other creatures to crack in with. Due to this, we'll be taking this build in a more defensive and value-focused direction than a typical aura build, focused more around keeping our creatures and ourselves alive for as long as possible while our opponents slowly succumb to our commander's life drain. Meaning we'll be running plenty of ways to keep our creatures from being destroyed in order to keep them and the auras they have attached to them in play for as long as possible, alongside various means to recur and or reanimate our auras, as well as auras that can recur and or reanimate themselves as the creatures they're attached to inevitably die off, to ensure we can keep the number of auras we have in play as high as possible. Then, coupled with a solid selection of enchantment and aura payoffs to generate us even more value and or to make us even harder to kill, and some more traditional auras to empower our creatures and our commander with so they can assist in softening up our opponent's life totals, we'll be left with a build whose vampiric auras will suck the life right out of our opponents, while they won't be able to lift a finger against us. So let us make our way to Eldraine and to the ruins of Ardenvale, where we'll find the sleeping court of our commander, Eriette. It is here, alongside her allies Ashiok and Rowan, where she twists the Wicked Slumber, once used to protect their plane from the Phyrexian invasion, to her own ends by turning it against the people of the realm, turning them into sleeping thralls bound to her will. And should her plan succeed, the entire realm will fall under her spell, a sleeping empire with her as the Ardent Queen for all eternity. So, now that we know a bit more about the commander and playstyle, let's start taking a look at the deck itself by starting with the creatures. Starting off with our creature base, we'll be primarily focusing our efforts here on gathering a small but powerful number of enchantment and aura payoffs to generate us value and get extra usage out of our auras. In the former camp, we'll be running the cost reducers Killian Ink Duelist, Starfield Mystic, Transcendent Envoy, and Danitha Capuchin Paragon, all of which make casting our auras cheaper and are not too shabby targets to enchant with our auras thanks to either having solid built-in keywords, or by growing over time as our auras are sent to the bin, and Core Spirit Dancer, Shram Senior Edificer, and Mesa Enchantress as means to generate us repeatable card advantage as we cast our auras, alongside Hateful Eidolon, who instead draws us cards whenever creatures enchanted by our auras inevitably die off. Then as some less traditional forms of card advantage, we'll be slotting in Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice as a repeatable aura tutor that generates 2-for-1 value off any aura spells we cast by fetching up another aura of equal to or lesser CMC from our deck into play attached to her, Heliod's Pilgrim as a one-time aura tutor to bolster our consistency even further, and Armored Sky Hunter as another repeatable way for us to get additional auras into play, this time as it swings in by letting us dig through the top 6 cards of our deck for any aura and putting it into play attached to anything, which it should be able to do fairly reliably thanks to its built-in evasion. And then on the generating extra value from our auras side of things, we'll have Archon of Sun's Grace and Grim Guardian joining our ranks, who, thanks to Constellation, will either allow us to build up our board further with evasive bodies or drain out our opponents even faster as we cast or cheat our auras into play, alongside Lurrus of the Dream Den and Sun Titan as repeatable ways for us to reanimate our auras from the bin, as well as other permanents to be used again, provided of course they're equal to or less than CMC2 or CMC3 respectively, which isn't too much of a limitation considering most of our auras fall within this range anyway. And then to close out our creature base with some more miscellaneous aura support pieces, we'll be adding in Spellbook Vendor as a repeatable source of auras via its cheap sorcerer role distribution to empower our creatures and enable our commander's AoE life drain, while also providing us with continual card selection as our creatures swing in, as well as the somewhat odd addition at first glance, Braid's Arisen Nightmare, who admittedly does not directly enable our aura-focused game plan, but, thanks to our various means to recur our auras from the graveyard, can reliably be used as a way for us to draw 3 additional cards and deal 2 additional damage to each player per rotation. As enchantments tend to be the least common permanent types on any given table, and our opponents are very likely either not to have one to be able to sacrifice in the first place, or be unwilling to sacrifice the ones that they do have. That covers all our creatures, so let's move on to our instance. It's going to be removal all the way down as we reach our instant category, consisting of Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares as dirt cheap exile-based creature removal, alongside Generous Gift and Stroke of Midnight as costlier but more flexible sources of permanent destruction instead. All 4 acting as a small but effective removal suite to help us deal with our opponent's threats at flash speed, which is always nice to have as an immediate response to otherwise game-ending threats that our auras would be too slow to intercept. That covers all our instants, so let's move on to our sorceries. Moving on to our sorceries, like the previous category, we'll only be including a small number of entries here in order to make room for more enchantments, consisting entirely of Aura Matters payoffs to further support our primary game plan. As such, we'll be running Open the Armory as another basic, no-nonsense aura tutor to reliably fetch up any aura we may need from our deck directly into our hand for only 2 mana, Retether as a mass aura reanimation spell that we can use to attach said auras to both our and our opponent's creatures as we see fit to help us retake control of the board alongside our commander, and lastly, Winds of Wrath as an on-theme board wipe that's particularly good for us in this build since it dodges all our opponent's creatures that we've enchanted, which still won't be able to attack us after the dust settles and will continue to drain the table thanks to our commander. That covers all our sorceries, so let's move on to our enchantments. Finally, reaching our largest and undoubtedly most important category, our enchantments in this build will predominantly consist of auras for our commander to make use of, most of which either fall into buff-focused auras that we'll be using to protect and empower our creatures with, or debuff auras that we'll be using to enchant our opponent's creatures with to prevent attacks and or inflict other conditions as well. Beginning with the first group and with some more defensive-oriented entries, we'll be slotting in Shielded by Faith and Timely Ward as easy ways to make our creatures indestructible, the latter being able to do so at flash speed for our commander in response to removal if needed. Kaya's Ghost Form, Minions Return, and Gift of Immortality as sources of on-death reanimation for our creatures, with the first also reanimating from exile, the second being at flash speed and giving us the option to use it on our opponent's creatures when they die to steal them for ourselves, and the last being repeatable by bringing itself back into play each turn attached to the creature it reanimates. And lastly, Spirit Mantle and Unquestioned Authority as means to protect our creatures from other creatures, protecting them from their effects, and, on top of that, enabling them to be both excellent blockers to intercept attacks for us, as well as evasive attackers to pile on the damage alongside our commander. Then switching gears from defense to offense, Demonic Embrace and Angelic Destiny will both be joining our aura arsenal as solid stat bumps and sources of evasion that, in addition, are also easily recurable from the bin via their own effects so we can get repeated uses out of them. Ethereal Armor, All That Glitters, and Sage's Reverie all earn spots in the final build as solid scalable stat bumps, the first two via scaling off of the number of enchantments we have in play, while the last only scales off auras attached to creatures, but makes up for it by being an on-theme source of card advantage that more often than not completely reloads our hands, and Angelic Gift making the final cut as well by simply being a cheap source of evasion that cantrips to replace itself, allowing our creatures to reliably get in for damage while we dig deeper into our deck for more resources. Then moving on to the auras we'll be using to debuff our opponent's creatures with, we'll start off with the removal auras Darksteel Mutation and Reprobation, both of which turn any creature they enchant into a vanilla 0/1 that we can then ignore while we continue to drain the table, Swift Reconfiguration as a cheap and flash speed way to turn any creature into a vehicle, which can be used offensively to slow down attack-focused creatures, or defensively by turning our commander into a vehicle to dodge creature removal while maintaining her passive effect from the back row, and Clawing Torment and Screams from Within as cheap non-destruction removal that we can use to deal with X1s and to weaken bigger creatures with, on top of providing additional utility outside of that in the form of passive burn to work alongside our commander, or by reanimating itself when its target inevitably dies off to be used again and to continue draining our opponents. Glistening Oil then makes it in as, strangely enough, another piece of non-destruction removal, as we'll mainly be slapping it onto an opponent's creature, granting it infect that it can't use against us thanks to Eriette, and slowly watching it die as it accumulates -1/-1 counters, then doing so all over again to another target when the original finally kicks the bucket thanks to it reanimating itself. We'll then also be running the Goading Auras, Ghoulish Impetus, Martial Impetus, and Parasitic Impetus as soft removal to compel our opponent's non-combat creatures to swing in, hopefully getting them destroyed by blockers in the process, while also providing additional upside via either reanimating themselves upon the creature's death, empowering all other creatures not attacking us, or just by draining out our opponents faster. Then moving away from auras designed to remove our opponent's creatures and onto some that are a bit less lethal but indefinitely more annoying, we'll be adding Spirit Link, Vampiric Link, and Spirit Loop to the build as cheap, lifelink adjacent effects that heal us whenever the enchanted creature deals damage, potentially gaining us huge swaths of life back as we enchant our opponent's biggest creatures with them, and the last one even recurring itself back to our hand when it goes to the bin. Dead Man's Chest as a usually do-nothing aura that alongside Eriette initially prevents attacks from coming towards us, and later turns into a way for us to steal resources off our opponent's decks as the enchanted creature dies off, and Nurgle's Rot as another cheap, do-nothing aura that this time creates a 1/3 body for us when the enchanted creature dies, on top of recurring itself back to our hand when it does so for additional value. And finally, reaching the end of our aura entries, we'll be running a handful of auras and pseudo-auras dedicated to generating us additional value, such as Lord Skitter's Blessing, which creates an aura in the form of a Wicked Roll token initially, and then acts as an on-theme Phyrexian Arena to draw us an extra card each turn. Underworld Connections as another pseudo-Phyrexian Arena effect that may require us to tap down a land each turn, but is still worth using to replenish our hands and to enable our commander. And Songbird's Blessing as an on-attack way for us to dig for and cheat auras into play that the creatures we protect and or make evasive can take advantage of reliably. And then to wrap up our enchantments, we'll be including a few non-aura entries to help enable our aura and enchantment heavy playstyle, such as the new Court of Ardenvale to provide us with both the Monarch and a way to repeatedly either recur or reanimate our auras or other CMC 3 or less permanents, depending on whether or not we're able to hold on to the crown, as well as the classic Sigil of the Empty Throne and Sphere of Safety to make attacking into us even harder, either by creating 4/4 Flying Angels as we cast our auras that we can also use to swing in with, or by forcing our opponents to pay mana to be able to attack us instead. That gets more and more expensive as more auras come into play. That covers all our enchantments, so let's move on to our artifacts. Reaching our artifact category, we'll be focusing this entire section into improving our mana base, with its entrance consisting of the Mana Rock Suite Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, Talisman of Hierarchy, Felwar Stone, and Mind Stone, as well as the land ramp source Wayfarer's Bubble, all of which serve as inexpensive ways for us to speed up and or fix our mana base to ensure we can cast our auras quickly and reliably to enable our commander's effects. That covers all our artifacts, so let's move on to our land base. Quickly going over our mana lands, we'll be running Command Tower, Caves of Koilos, Shine Shadow Snarl, and Tainted Field as dual lands that either always or typically come into play untapped in order for us to get reliable access to our colors without having to sacrifice speed to do so. Temple of Silence as another dual land that may come into play tapped, but makes up for it through its ETB Scry 1 to help smooth out our next draw. Myriad Landscape as a land ramp source from our land slot to help speed up and fix our mana base while getting basics out of our deck. And lastly, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse as a pair of slow fetches to get even more basics out of our deck while fixing our colors to improve consistency even further. Then for utility lands, we'll be adding in Bajuga Bog as a simple but effective way to deal with graveyard-focused builds by exiling their graveyards, Castle Loch Thwain as a repeatable source of card advantage from our land slot, which is very useful considering the high volume of cheap spells we'll be running, and the recently reprinted Hall of Heliod's Generosity as one last way for us to recur our most powerful auras from the bin to be used again if we need to. And finally, we'll be running 13 plains and 12 swamps as our basics to close out our land base. So, now that we've covered all the cards in the deck, let's take a look at this deck's breakdown. This deck currently has 18 creatures including our commander, 4 instants, 3 sorceries, 33 enchantments, 7 artifacts, 0 planeswalkers, and 35 lands. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 31 cards that are either auras themselves or that create aura tokens, 16 cards that care about auras, 10 cards that care about enchantments, 3 cards that care about permanents, 7 auras that can recur or reanimate themselves from the bin, 5 cards that allow us to recur or reanimate our auras from the bin, and 8 cards that protect our creatures from removal, leaving us with a solid aura-focused build with plenty of auras to enable our commander, a good number of payoffs for them to generate us extra value and get extra uses out of them, and a decent amount of ways to ensure they stick around for as long as possible, both by protecting the creatures they're attached to and bringing them back from the bin if they're sent there. For general deck stats, we have 12 ramp sources, 13 card draw sources, 14 targeted removal sources, and 1 board wipe, with our draw being slightly higher than average in this build to help ensure we can keep replenishing our hands as we cast our low CMC auras. Then looking at our mana curve, we have 12 1-drops, 22 2-drops, 23 drops, 7 4-drops, 3 5-drops, and 1 6-drop. giving us a very low-to-the-ground curve in which we'll be focusing on getting our commander and aura payoffs into play quickly, preferably with means to protect them from removal to ensure they stick around for longer, and then we can just sit back, relax, and continue casting and recurring our auras while protecting our commander until our life-stealing auras drain our opponents dry. Currently, this deck is valued at $64.41, not counting the price of basic lands or shipping. This price was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For side grades, we can consider exchanging out Angelic Gift for Trespasser's Curse to add more life drain to the build, at the cost of cutting an efficient cantripping aura that we can use both on our and our opponent's creatures. Demonic Embrace can be replaced with Light of Promise if we want to include a decent life gains matter aura in the build to further grow our creatures with instead of an evasion granting recurable one, and Braid's Arisen Nightmare can be swapped out for Umbra Mystic if we're looking for even more ways to protect our creatures from removal with if we feel the build has enough draw already. Then for upgrades, Underworld Connections can be cut for Enlightened Tutor to give us access to a dirt-cheap instant speed tutor that fetches up our primary playmakers. Sigil of the Empty Throne can be replaced with Ondu Spirit Dancer as an arguably superior enchantment payoff that helps us double up on our auras as we cast or reanimate them to further enable our commander. And if we're looking to spend the big bucks, Dead Man's Chest can be axed in favor of Zenik Paladin Unbroken, who weaponizes our auras even further by granting them all Exalted to power up single attackers with, synergizing very nicely with our naturally evasive creatures and our evasion granting auras, though this Paladin will cost us a hefty sum if we want to have him join our party. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. Firstly, I would like to extend my thanks to the channel subscribers yet again for helping the channel reach its 14.8k subscriber milestone. The 15k subscriber milestone is just around the corner thanks to all of your support. So thank you all for having helped us get this far, and be sure to stick around for the upcoming 15k subscriber giveaway to help celebrate this achievement. Now, taking a look at our upcoming commander builds, we'll actually be putting the scheduled builds on hold for a bit as we tackle the precon upgrades for the Doctor Who precons that just came out. But after we're done covering those, we'll be releasing the build for Sir Ginger the Meal Ender, followed by last week's poll winner, Totentaz Swarmpiper. So stay tuned for those builds coming soon. And since we'll be covering the Doctor Who precons next week, that also means we'll be putting the polls on hold as well for the time being. So instead, I'd like to hear from you in the comments of what you think of the Doctor Who precons, if you enjoy them or not, and if anyone in particular has piqued your interest. And lastly, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this channel can't continue to grow without your support. And if you're feeling particularly generous, feel free to keep me caffeinated via buying me a coffee at the link in the description, or alternatively, use our Game Nerds affiliate link in the description if you're looking to purchase sealed MTG product, accessories, board games, or any of their other wide selection of products at low prices that include free shipping for orders over $75, and a rewards program that builds up store credit over time as you make your purchases. And if any of you would like to support the channel in a different way, feel free to check out the other deck techs floating around my head if you'd like to see the latest builds, or click on the link above for a playlist of all the Cut Rate Commander episodes I've made so far. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.